All right, and we're back with the guys from Conspirinormal. And yeah, how you guys doing?
Doing well.
How was the break? You had a couple of beers?
Yeah, about a whole 6-pack.
Excellent. So we want to discuss in no particular order some stuff about the gods of Eden, and also you guys have an online conference coming up, which should be real interesting.
Yes, we do. We have the Strange Realities conference coming up.
Strange Realities. Yeah. So what was the impetus for starting the conference? And I think you guys did one last year. Was last year the first one?
Yeah, last year was the first one.
In real life.
2019. Yeah, in real life, back when you could do that kind of thing. So it was always just something that was in my mind that I wanted to do. I had gone to several different conferences in the past. It was kind of like a thing that I liked to do a while back and still enjoy to do. And about 2017, I went to Roswell, New Mexico to a good friend of mine, Guy Malone, who later spoke at the first conference and now is part of the second conference. And that was part of his conference was part of the big 50 years or 70-year anniversary for Roswell, New Mexico, and whatever crashed there. And so we did that. That was with Rob, who you guys have probably heard on the show before.
Yeah.
Rob ran sound for him. And I kind of had the idea at the time. I was like, you know what? I think it might be time to kind of start moving to the next level, to the conference level. And so about like 2019, early 2019, I was just like, Surfiel had this place in mind that was down the street from his place. And we thought, well, I think we could do this. And that place, I think, went out of business, right, Surfiel? Yeah. And so, but we had that connection with Rob working at this place called SIR, which is like it's a place where bands practice in Nashville.
Equipment rental.
Yeah, and great big room that we could be in. We had a free sound guy in Rob because he could run the sound. And we were like, we could do this fairly cheap. And I was like, we could fly in people from out of town, and some people like Joshua Cutchin, who was pretty close, because he was only in Atlanta. And we just said, I think we can do it. So we just started, getting people in. We had, I think we had 8 speakers, 9 presentations last year. And we just actually streamed those on our Facebook page, Conspirinormal Facebook page. We just streamed those last Saturday. So those are actually available now on YouTube and on our Facebook page for people to check out if they want all the presentations from last year, because we got them. My cousin actually came up from Atlanta, got them filmed. Then we had somebody edit them this year. And so, it was just like something that I always wanted to do. And so we're going to do it again this year.
Last year, it was a single day thing, right?
It was a single day thing.
Yeah,
right. And we were going to pretty much do the same thing. I think what our original plan for it this year was we were going to be at the same place, but we were going to do it like a dinner kind of setting. And we were going to have like about 2 or 3 speakers that night. And then we would have the rest of the speakers on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, the world changed because of COVID. And we didn't know whether we were going to do it, what we were going to do, until probably about late May, early June. And we decided that what we were going to do was do an online conference this year. And that, I think, really freed up some things. I mean, it's like, it's easier to do an online conference in the fact that for the people that, not that they would travel anyway, but if you think about it, people got to pay a certain amount to go to the conference, which is probably like the cheapest part of their trip.
Yeah.
Then they got to pay for a hotel. They got to pay for airfare. Or they got to pay gas to get here.
Yep.
With this, we could keep the price fairly low, which is $20. And we were also able to get more people to be a part of this because we didn't have to fly anybody in. So we have 21 speakers spread out over 3 days, which is the 25th, 26th, and 27th. Friday is more of an evening thing, but the 26th and 27th, those are going to be pretty much full day events.
Wow.
And we're going to be streaming it live all day. And if people are interested, it's $20 to get tickets. That's 21 speakers. I mean, that's less than $1 per speaker. When people sign up, they can sign up through Eventbrite, which is what we've got it on there. They can go to strangerealitiesconference.com and they can get a ticket through there. And we actually have it set up for like a private Facebook group that the only people that have paid can get into that group.
Oh, yeah.
And they will be able to watch the conference all day. And they can actually also, because Facebook obviously preserves what you stream, as long as you leave it up, they can actually go back. If they've missed anything, they can go back and watch the presentation. So we think it's a pretty good deal for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
But here's my question. I have a bunch of artifacts I found in my backyard. How can I sell them at your conference?
We'll get you a little segment. You can stream, show them, and then they can do like, we'll have an auctioneer.
All right.
We'll get Jim Banal to be an auctioneer. I think he can do the.
Oh, yeah.
25, 25. So we do it like that. That's how we'll do it.
Excellent.
We also are going to have something. We're going to have like a tip jar for the speakers as well.
Oh, that's cool.
The $20 will, some of that is going to go to the cost to cover these speakers, but also these guys are putting in their time, they're putting in their effort. Some of them have books that they're selling. So we kind of push people to buy the books and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And the lineup is just really epic. Like Adam said, we were able to get a lot of people we couldn't get before just because of time and space constraints. But with all these people, it really shows a good spread, and it's a good representation of like all the different stuff we cover on the show. So it's kind of, it's a really good presentation of what Conspirinormal really represents too. So it's kind of in line with that. And some of our favorite people who've been on the show and a lot of recurring guests and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you got Soraya. Isn't Soraya going to be a part of it?
Soraya is going to be a part of it.
Is he actually giving a presentation, or is he?
He is actually giving a presentation.
Wow.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're very excited to have him. He actually was, when we were still planning on doing it.
Yeah, he was going to travel.
Event, he was going to come to Nashville, but that obviously did not happen.
Right.
So we hope next year. I mean, we're kind of looking towards next year what we're going to do. Of course, a lot of it is going to depend on the situation in the world, but we're kind of thinking about doing it kind of like a hybrid event. Possibly doing like a day of live presentations and then a day of online presentations.
Yeah.
But streaming the entire thing online.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's the way to do it. It does seem like you could get a lot more both attendees and speakers that way.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. I was always kind of against the online thing because, in my opinion, I always felt like well, it's a happening, it's a thing. It's like it's not going to be as good as it is being online. But now I've kind of changed my thoughts on that, and I think it's just another way for people that because there's people that don't have the money or the cash or the time to go to come to Nashville to see this, and it's a big investment, and having that online component I think is very really important.
Yeah, and I think
seeing a lot of these kind of springing up right now.
Right, and I think that combining the two is probably your best bet. You'll be able to eventually, if everything goes back to somewhat semi normal, then you'll
Yeah.
be able to have live event. You'll have in-person live events that people can attend, but also stream it. And then you can have, people that live halfway across the world can attend in a way.
Yeah.
As opposed to just not being able to go at all. So I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've got our friend Miguel, Red Pill Junkie. He's going to be beaming in from Mexico City.
Yeah.
Then people from all over the states. So yeah, it's real cool. It's freed up a lot of people to be able to speak and see.
Yeah. Well, that's
But
great.
like you said, there's really nothing better than those hanging out in real life and those hallway conversations, where you really get the deep stuff, and
that's
the
right.
secrets. But,
we're gonna try to replicate some of that.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to do. We're gonna do like a Zoom,
like
meeting
hangouts
probably
at
on,
night that all the speakers and the attendees can hang out together and stuff like that.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
We're gonna try not to let Alan Greenfield dominate the conversation.
Just everybody needs to have like hotel hallway backgrounds, right?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes,
Good idea.
very perfect.
Yeah.
Would you guys like to know who we have other than Soraya, which I'm sure is worth the price of admission alone?
Yeah, let's hear it.
But okay, so guys, well, I'll just kind of run down the list here with some of these people, and we've actually been putting a lot of these on our Facebook page. If you guys want to go check that out, Conspirinormal Facebook page, we've got little graphics for each one and a little title. We got Brent Rains, who's going to be there. Who's going to be part of this? Brent is he's an older ufologist here in Tennessee, and he's going to be talking about his presentation is called "Opening Pandora's Box: UFOs and the Psychic Nexus." An exploration into the psychic components of the UFO enigma. So we're bringing some UFOs into it. Aaron Goulias, who is the host of the Saucer Life podcast. But Aaron is actually not going to be talking about UFOs. He's going to be his presentation is Happy Endings, Triumphalist Conspiracy Narratives Since the End of the Cold War. And basically talking about conspiracy theories that are to the positive side, at least for the people that believe in them. David Metcalf is also going to be there, who's going to talk about hidden pathways of magic, supernatural living in the American marketplace. Basically, that is about what he calls gas station or grocery store grimoires, where you can find these odd like books of divination that have kind of a Christian bent in gas stations and grocery stores.
Wow.
It's a phenomenon that David has found it's particularly in the American South.
Wow.
Stephanie Quick, all the way up from California. She's going to be talking about wild talents, activate your capacity to manifest synchronicity.
Oh, yeah.
John Tenney. I'm sure you guys know who John is. He is got a really cryptic title for his 6079 Tenney J Life in Room 101. And what was he? I think he described it last night, didn't he, Serfiel? Kind of about.
Yeah. Are we supposed to? Like
don't give away the secret.
Yeah, I don't know if we're supposed to let anyone know that.
Yeah, we might not want to. Yeah, well, I mean, he let everybody know on the stream last night, but
It's conspiracy theory related also, kind of on a meta level.
Well, what's his normal topics? Maybe that would give people a hint.
He's kind of all across the board, man, really. I mean, he's a ghost hunter, but he's also an old-time conspiracy researcher too.
All right.
John's was on a show called Ghost Stalkers back a few years ago, which is probably, I think, one of the better ghost hunting shows that was out there, but it only lasted like about 6 seasons. I mean, not 6 seasons, but 6 episodes. Red Pill Junkie, like Sergio mentioned before, it's called Smoke, Mirrors, and Plexiglass Windows, the Nested Deceptions of Planet Ummo, UMMO, which is a not as well known UFO or contactee case in Spain, but people here in the United States or the English speaking world may not know it as well as like people in the Spanish speaking world. So he's going to enlighten us on that. And Jenny Ashford, who is part of the 13 O'Clock podcast, which and YouTube series, which is a very cool and interesting show. You guys should check out sometime. It's pretty fun. She's going to be talking about some true crime. And she's going to talk about unsolved murders in the oldest city, which is about some murders that happened in St. Augustine, Florida. And she's in Florida. She's working on that as part of her book. The great and someone that, you know, is just has no comparison, you know, no rules, no comparison. Mr. Tim Banal of America.
Yeah.
He's going to be talking about it's a continuation of his presentation from last year where he talked about kind of the strange history and strange beliefs of flat earth theorists.
Oh, wow.
And Tim actually went to right the month after Strange Realities 1, he actually went to the Flat Earth conference in Dallas.
Man,
so kind of did like an embedded journalist slash kind of
that's dedication.
Anthropologist thing.
Yeah. So his is called Among the People of Flat Earth, Recollections from a Visit to the International Flat Earth Conference. Joshua Cutchin. I know you guys know Josh.
Oh, yeah.
He is going to be talking about bringing some cryptozoology to you guys, the Buzz and the Beast, altered states of consciousness, and Bigfoot encounters, which if you guys have, I don't know if you've read Where the Footprints In, but that's a really good book. So I think he's going to be pulling some things from that.
It's about Bigfoot stealing your stash.
Yeah, something like that. Kiki Dombrowski, who until lately lived in Nashville, but she's a witchcraft practitioner. She's been on our show. She's going to be talking about prophecies, predictions, and cycles during our lifetimes. That's the title of hers. And Tony Kale, who we just posted up his today. Now, there's a two-part. There's actually two speakers doing one presentation, and they're taking two parts. Tony is taking the first part of that, which is called Hidden in Shadows When Folk Magic Met the Paranormal. And Tony studies folk magic, especially hoodoo is one of his biggest focus because he lives in Memphis. And then Jack Montgomery is taking part 2 of that. And Jack is a practitioner of folk magic, primarily the Pennsylvania Dutch powwow tradition. Okay. So those are the ones that I have as far as people, and also Michael Carter, Reverend Michael Carter. I always want to call him doctor for some reason. He is going to be there. He's going to be talking about UFOs in the Bible, which I guess is kind of similar to Gods of Eden, I suppose.
Yeah.
He's been on Ancient Aliens, quite a few other shows. Alan Greenfield, who we just mentioned, is going to be doing a comedy act. But actually, he's going to be, the author of Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts and the founder of the Free Illuminist movement. He is going to be doing a question and answer session.
All right.
So make sure somebody asks him questions.
What about Soraya? You didn't mention him.
Soraya is going to be talking about, I believe it's going to be something, it's actually here on the website. He says that he's going to be talking about time and the odd connection to unexplained phenomenon, as well as different ways of looking at experiences people have. So
that ought to be interesting.
Soraya is a deep thinker.
Yeah.
Ren Collier, who we mentioned before. Ren is going to be talking about the Hollow Earth.
Oh, cool.
Mythology.
I think he's
This
kind
is
of
the
given
first
like
time.
a whole expose on the history of it in mythology and folklore, right?
Yes, and probably linking it to occultism as well.
Yeah,
I
Rin's
would
also
say.
a magic practitioner, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Future, our good friend Michael Bennett, he's going to be giving a presentation on some aspects of his forthcoming book series on two masters and two gospels. So his is more of a kind of, I guess you could say, a conspiracy type presentation as well.
That's two masters and two gospels. Is that what you said?
Two masters and two gospels.
Yeah.
That's the name of his book. And we've got Steven Steiner, also known as Recluse, and he's going to be talking about like right wing imagery. Was that right, Sergio?
I'm not sure.
Something like that. And some of like the magic, I guess, like occultism that's associated with that, and magical and some like synchromistic type of aspects to it. Greg Bishop,
he gets really deep on some real dark conspiracy stuff to make you not be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, absolutely. You should check out his podcast, The Farm. I can't give it enough praise. Greg Bishop. Now he's going to be talking about. He told us last night. Didn't give us a title, but I guess kind of like a co-creation theory and kind of like the obliqueness of the UFO phenomenon.
Oh yeah.
And how that influences researchers and witnesses. Timothy Renner. Not quite sure what Renner is going to be talking about, but whatever
Really
it is, it may deal with cryptozoology and probably paranormal aspects of that.
And like last year when him and Josh did a joint presentation, they basically gave everyone a preview last year of what was in the book that was upcoming but has come out now, where the footprints. And I think Tim's material this year is going to be kind of a real preview too of stuff that hasn't been released.
All right.
Guy Malone, who I mentioned before, who I went to his conference back in 2017, he is going to be giving a presentation on aliens and demons and the association between the two. And I do believe that is everybody.
Man, sounds like a good lineup. Yeah, I think isn't Greg is also he's Radio Mysterioso, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Greg is
also
awesome.
a great podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is everyone that is going to be at the Strange Realities Conference 2020, which is going to be online September 25th, 26th, 27th.
StrangeRealities.com, Conspirinormal.com.
Yep.
You've got everything from UFOs to magic and folklore to conspiracy. It's just all over the place. Cryptids. It gives a real good representation of what our podcast is all about.
All right. Sounds good. And it's an apt name for the conference, given the times we live in. Strange realities.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. It's like Serfiel said. I mean, we're combining kind of the paranormal, conspiracy theory, real, and when I say conspiracy theory, like there's some real like serious research going on with some of these, but especially Dr. Future and Recluse. I mean, they really dig deep into their respective fields of interest. And they really bring a lot of just information to the table.
All right. Sounds good. So people need to go sign up. I think we'll be there.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. All right.
StrangeRealities.com.
Yeah,
that was a great commercial you guys sent us.
StrangeRealities.conference.com. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta. Sergio was afraid that it sounded too much like a monster truck.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, man, this is awesome. It's just straight up monster.
You got to have
Strange Realities.
I was like, that's great. It's perfect.
Yeah.
if we could have put in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
And Saturday.
So have you been reading Gods of Eden? You were waving the book at us.
Well, so I read Gods of Eden a while ago.
Yeah.
Like, man, we're talking probably a little less than 25 years ago. And it was one of those books that I really enjoyed at the time. But as I kind of more, have done a lot more research and and had some of my viewpoints changed, I've kind of,
Not
gone away
buying it.
from it. It's one of those books that like you can pick up and you can just like turn to a chapter and you can just like start reading. It's like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that you guys did. How many parts was that? 7 parts or
Yeah,
something
I think
like
so.
that?
I think 7 parts. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get through like the whole thing?
No.
Because I thought it was almost like you were I could tell that, like, because I could remember reading like those parts, at least in the first couple of parts. I could remember like reading all that.
Yeah.
It's an interesting book. William Bramley, I don't think is the guy's name. I think that was a pen name, what I've always understood. But it's odd. It's an odd book in a way because it's like he was trying to figure out the roots of warfare
Yeah.
and trying to really understand that. And somehow that goes into religion, which, you can see that. Okay. That's not a big leap of logic. But then all of a sudden, it's like you can kind of see like how he worked backwards. Like the book is linear, but
Yes.
it's like he was trying to figure out, oh, okay, well, we're talking about all this, 20th century stuff, and then trying to figure out all that, and then trying to figure out how secret societies influenced conflict. And then somehow that ends up basically with the Zechariah Sitchin stuff,
Yeah.
which I felt like, in many ways I kind of find problematic now just because of some of like the research of somebody like Dr. Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser. I don't know if you've ever looked into him, but he pretty much is like debunks
That's
Sitchin.
SitchinIsWrong.com, right? That's
Yeah, SitchinIsWrong.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because Dr. Heiser is an actual ancient Near East scholar and linguist and says it just like, Sitchin got everything wrong. But Bramley, whoever Bramley is, based everything essentially off of that.
You obviously haven't been to sitchinisbitchin.com.
No, I haven't.
Well, so I agree. When we went through the book this time, and I read it a while back too, not 25 years ago, but I read it a long time ago, and Kyle kind of went through it too. And when we went through it this time, after having done a lot of the podcast, a lot of this other research,
I wasn't sure anybody else had ever read this thing, man. And when you guys put that out, I was like, what?
it was
Because it was a book I randomly picked up at a bookstore back when I was like 19 or something.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember how I came across it. I can't recall, but I originally got a PDF a long time ago, and somebody mentioned it somewhere. I was probably on Above Top Secret or something like that. And who knows, I was somewhere on some conspiracy forum and someone was like, oh, you got to check this book out. So I read it. And yeah, it was a formative thing for me. It changed the way I look at a lot of things, but what I should say is that it led me into like, all right, I want to dive into this stuff. That's really what happened. And so going through it this time on the podcast, I had a lot of the same, I'm like, yeah, I'm not really buying this part, or I think that he's kind of glossing over something here, or I don't know if that connection can necessarily be made. But I do agree that his process was interesting, where he's basically looking at what is the source of warfare, and he's seeing this Machiavellian stuff happening all over the place, and he keeps seeing it as far back as he can go in history, right? And then if the farther back you go in history, obviously, once you get into the really old stuff, the gods start showing up and doing all the Machiavellian stuff. And I think that's really, if you want to just, if I was to give a synopsis of the book, I would just say that his basic thing is like, well, the source of this seems to be ancient, what ancient people called gods that came from the sky. So yeah, he's kind of going down a Sitchin route there. But I don't know. I don't fully buy that SitchinWasWrong.com. I don't completely buy that. I have read a lot of that guy's stuff, and to me, it all seems like differences in interpretation. He's in a lot of places. People are like, "Oh, Sitchin was totally wrong on this," and I'm just like, "Well, he's interpreting it differently than you are, but it isn't like he's completely wrong. We don't know what these people were saying either. We have these ancient texts. They say this thing. You can look at multiple different translations, both by that guy that has that website, plus many other legitimate translators. All the translations are in some ways similar, but in other ways drastically different. But they all seem to be kind of saying the same thing, that gods came out of the sky and they were running everything back in the day. And then the interpretation of the scientific realm is that this is all religious crap. And Sitchin was just like, well, let's take them seriously. Gods came out of the sky, lowercase g gods is what we call them. And whether those were aliens or are people, other people that were advanced, that were living somewhere else on the planet, I don't know.
Right.
But
which is what I tend to more, I'm much more an ancient civilization guy than I am ancient aliens guy.
Yeah. Kyle and I really like the ancient civilizations interpretation. But of course, we've talked to Laird Scranton too, and he's like, look, you can't just say that about all of these, because he's done all this research in the Dogon, and the Dogon people are like, well, these weren't people, and they weren't aliens coming out of the sky. They were actually coming from a different realm and interacting.
Yeah, the interdimensional kind of stuff, and that's kind of what I was about to kind of say, because kind of leafing through it now, where he talks a lot about, of course, he gets into the the Nazi occult stuff and how that came about, and he talks a lot about Freemasonry. There's even a chapter in here about Joseph Smith.
Hey,
hey, Uncle. Yeah, and so he talks about that. He talks about Saint Germain.
Yes,
the Mount Shasta stuff, and I remember all this really well because a lot of especially the Saint Germain. This book was the first time I'd ever heard of any of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and but for him, starting off from this kind of materialist point of view, as ancient aliens, that these are physical beings from the sky, it's more like looking at this now, where you see the influence of maybe some kind of otherworldly entities, or especially with stuff like Seraphiel and I've talked about this a lot, about the ascended masters, that's in Blavatsky and Theosophy. All that is I think that's what you're dealing with, is some kind of like, I guess for lack of a better term, interdimensional, like what Laird says.
I actually like to think of it that Bramley was going more along the lines of, say, like Charles Fort than he was so much Sitchin. I know he pulled a lot of stuff from Sitchin, but he also pulled stuff from Fort. And Fort was saying the same thing. Giant ships are going back and forth in the sky, and we are owned by them. Like, basically,
we're property. Is
exactly
what Fort said. There's an interesting part to this book, and I thought that it was something that was kind of more original to him than borrowed from Sitchin. And a part that really always was, I found really compelling, and that was the chapter on the Black Death.
Yes, man, that was
and
fantastic.
I've probably read this chapter several times more than I've actually read the entire book since. But like he does some interesting things and says some interesting things about, like, the way that they were carrying scythes.
Yep.
Death is always the Grim Reaper. Yeah. And like, I don't know if I believe any of this, but like, talking about these figures that would be out in fields, like spraying things. you know, and then all of a sudden the plague would start.
Yep.
Like I found that compelling, and I found it compelling then, and I still find that compelling.
Yeah.
You know, I can't really explain it, but I thought it was just an interesting idea that he was actually kind of thinking a little bit outside the box
Yeah.
on that, instead of just giving lip service to the ancient aliens idea, which I think he published this in 1989, and he was probably writing it all through the 80s. So that was still, you know, ancient alien stuff. I mean, it made its comeback obviously in the last decade, but then it was like extremely popular. My problem with the ancient aliens, any of the ancient aliens and stuff, ancient aliens material, is that it just comes from the materialist viewpoint. It doesn't give any line to like spiritual beings, which, you know, all this stuff that we talk about on our show. I mean, you can say just about any of this stuff, like, you know, Josh and Tim's book, you know, the Where the Footprints in.
Yeah.
People are seeing Bigfoot, but the manifestations are not, they don't have, it's like they defy physical reality.
Right.
Right.
It's similar to UFOs. They seem to have a physical trace, and yet they defy physical reality as we know it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's still room for people to be for people who are more materialist minded in you know, just different aspects of psychology. There, you know, if you don't have to necessarily believe in all the woo, but you know, every night we go to sleep and see these entire different worlds that can profoundly impact us. So, you know, whatever that is, it could just be, even if you are from that materialist viewpoint, you know, just what's actually in the recesses of our minds, the subconscious, collective conscious, things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's what, like I said with Laird is saying the same thing. You know, like you don't have to look for ancient aliens. These people were interacting with something that is a lot like the Bigfoot thing that we see, or the UFO. You know, this stuff that seems to come here from somewhere else. It manifests in a semi-physical way and has physical effects and leaves physical traces, but isn't totally physical. Can vanish without a trace, you know, in front of your eyes. And some of these ancient peoples were talking about being taught or speaking to or interacting with these beings, and they have depictions of them. And, you know, they still make masks of them today. And, you know, ancient alien people will latch onto that and say, well, look, these are aliens. But, I mean, yeah, what is an alien, really? I mean, is a transdimensional being basically an alien to Earth? Yeah, I think so. You know? It's not a nuts and bolts thing like flying here from some other world in our universe, though. But I don't know. I do, like I said before, Kyle and I kind of like we like the idea that there were ancient advanced civilizations that may have been doing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
That the ancient aliens people attribute to aliens. And, you know, like what is Giorgio always pointing out? They were flesh and blood entities. Well, yeah, they were people.
Right.
Yeah.
So I never read this book. Is this like how did you all encounter this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can't remember where I first came across it, but I remember when I first started reading it, it was blowing my mind. I mean, the whole thing was blowing my mind. I was aware of Sitchin at the time, and I did recognize some of his work in there. But like,
I mean, he literally covers everything.
Yeah.
He goes through all of history, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, just any source of conflict. I mean, he covers communism. He covers the road, like the round table, Cecil Rhodes round table. So we're even getting into like Council on Foreign Relations, like
CFR,
you know, the Carol Quigley stuff. You know, he gets into all that. So it's just like it's basically one guy's unified field conspiracy theory.
That's right.
But at the end of it, there is some kind of like alien intelligence that is
that's his idea
that is in control.
Well, yes, he's basically saying that it seems as though throughout all of history, humanity has been that the conflicts that we see throughout history have been in some ways a product of a control mechanism set in place by something he calls the custodians. He's like, I don't know what they are. You know, and he doesn't want to call them aliens because he, you know, and I found that interesting because he's like, look, you know, whether they're aliens or not, he doesn't really know. So he's like, let's just call them the custodians, the people who are who are running.
Some Gnostic sects really have that view.
Yes, and there's the like the archons, right? They're kind of exactly. They're manipulating in the background all the time. And this is why, you know, and I found it interesting too, because you can kind of, when we have this joke that we've got a Discord chat, and now we're always telling each other, you know, that sounds like custodial bullshit right there. It's like, you know, anytime you see some aspect of control, some kind of control mechanism operating in the background, making everybody fight each other all the time instead of getting stuff done, that's custodial BS, right?
Yeah.
Whoever those people are.
Basically, he takes it to the two Sumerian gods or Babylonian gods. What was it? Enki and Ea.
Enlil, yeah.
Yeah, and I forget which is which, but
Enki's the cool one who liked people but is demonized throughout the rest of history. And
he started the Brotherhood of the Snake.
Yeah, Brotherhood of the Serpent.
That sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah, doesn't that sound a little familiar there? Yeah.
And so he starts that, and it's like that is like kind of what Bramley terms the idea of like the custodial religion, which is set up by the custodians to control mankind.
Yeah.
And this idea of like the maverick religion, which is like something that breaks away. And Enki is usually in charge of that. He's usually depicted as like the serpent in the garden. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're getting into things that are kind of like, I guess, stuff that like, you know,
Luciferian.
Yeah, Luciferian stuff, you know, like I guess like Albert Pike, Manly P. Hall, I guess would have written about. And
yeah, Hall definitely.
So the maverick religions, you know, don't stay maverick very long. They get co-opted, you know, like, you know, Buddha was a maverick religion, and Jesus started a maverick religion, but they all eventually get co-opted by the custodians, and that, you know, and the religions, and then first religions and then secret societies, once religion doesn't really work anymore, are set up to essentially prolong human conflict and keep us fighting with each other.
Right. That they are the intermediaries between the custodial powers and the human interface on the planet. So the big religions, or even, you know, not even the big ones now, but just these ancient big religions, ones that are completely gone now, that started gigantic empires. And then, you know, you keep coming up into the present where you have secret societies, and some of these are all part of what he called the corrupted brotherhood. Because Enki initially started the Brotherhood of the Serpent in order to inject the maverick teachings, what's really going on, into humanity in a secret way, but that got corrupted soon after it was started, and now it's used as a custodial tool.
So it sounds, well, basically that concept is the white versus the black lodge,
right?
And this sounds like it was kind of like the Morning of the Magicians for Generation X. Like it kind of gives this expose on like greatest hits of conspiracy and occult secret societies, all this stuff, and
with UFOs added in.
Yeah,
right, just toss in some aliens in.
Well, it sounds cool. I'd like to check it out.
I loved the ancient stuff. You know, even if he's completely wrong about the custodians and everything that's going on, all of the looking at the different ancient civilizations was fantastic. It was a great overview of certain aspects of it, all the way up to, you know, like you said, Adam, up to, you know, Saint Germain. Just like he goes through a lot of anomalous topics. And man, you're right that the plagues stuff was absolutely fascinating.
Still it's compelling.
Yeah. I think we did 7 parts, but I think we ended, I didn't read much out of the second half of the book, which was mostly modern history, because our podcast is focused on ancient stuff. So we went through a lot of the first half of the book with all the ancient stuff, and I think we got up to Saint Germain and kind of stopped. I was like, we're done. It's too recent. Let's move on to something else.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, it's, he covers the Kennedy assassination. I
Yep.
mean, it's like everything. And then he gets into this chapter here. He's got about modern Ezekiel's, quote unquote, where he talks about alien abduction. He talks about the Andreasen affair, which is an interesting one if you've ever looked at that. A lot of religious imagery in that particular alien contact case.
Yeah, he points out that throughout the ages, you see these same kind of encounters that have these same imagery, and he ascribes that to custodians messing with people and starting up trends or causing conflict, or like, let's pick this guy and turn him into some prophet and send him off to this place to say all this stuff, and it's going to start this huge war. And he points out that the imagery is the same across history. Now that's his interpretation. There could be many other reasons why the imagery might be the same. It may not be necessarily purposeful for aspects of control, but he does have a compelling idea in some cases.
And there's other things that I've heard since I've read this book. I've heard ideas about, like, entities that like to cause warfare. They like to cause conflict because they essentially can feed off the negativity.
Yeah.
And some of this idea of, like, the power of blood, and they can feed off of that. And, I've definitely have heard those ideas, the kind of like the I guess the supernatural parasite kind of thought,
and that doesn't actually conflict with what he was saying, because he makes it clear that he's like, look, I don't know what these custodians are trying to do, except they want to keep us in conflict all the time, because that's a good way to control.
Yeah, and he does talk a lot about spirituality in the book, and one of our criticisms was, it seems like it sort of comes across like he's got spirituality all figured out.
Yeah.
That's one of the things.
Right.
But the point is that he's talking about spirituality, and that the custodians are trying to suppress the spiritual knowledge in mankind, so that we remain ignorant of our higher selves and all this. So there's a spiritual component to it, and he's not necessarily saying these beings are all flesh and blood, because in the very beginning parts, he's talking about how they, it's the Sitchin idea that they are spiritual beings that are fully aware of their ability to, actually exist in the spirit realm, so they can kind of pick, they can move
basically
in
live forever. Yeah,
live forever, move in and out of bodies, but it's a little bit of both. It's not all materialist aliens and UFO stuff.
Yeah. Well, it essentially just sounds like that, white versus black lodge kind of thing that, like, Alan Greenfield talks about, that comes from P.B. Randolph and Blavatsky and those kind of ideas, which is crazy because those ideas have influenced the, like, Christian conspiracy world so much. And it's really from an ultimately occult source.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of like we mentioned, David Metcalf and his talk. That's kind of very similar to what, these gas station grimoires, and then, it's all like occulty kind of stuff, but it's like, it has this Christian bent to it. And there's some interesting things. There's some interesting things around all that.
Yeah. I think that the battle between good and evil is just, it's in everything. You can't avoid it. There's whatever you think about good and evil, however you define good and or evil, you see it throughout all of history. People are talking about it, and that there seems to be these two warring factions. And I think that's kind of what Bramley was getting at in that, was that, but in his book, the good guys are always losing all the time. They're always, yeah. It's a sort of a grim thing that he's saying. He's like, look, we're totally owned and controlled by these custodians, and we've been fighting each other all the time because that's how they want it, and that the influence of the remnants of the uncorrupted brotherhood are few and far between and only appear as tiny blips in history. And then every once in a while, someone will show up like the Buddha or Jesus and try to re-inject the teachings of Enki and the real spirituality and how to really achieve spiritual enlightenment back into the world. And then it almost completely gets co-opted and corrupted and changed and turned against everybody. And it's a pretty dark picture that he paints.
Yeah, he's a happy guy.
Yeah. Real happy guy.
Yeah, he ends the book. I found this interesting. I remember he says, "Good luck and happy sleuthing."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well, the final chapter I did read on the show because he was basically like, here's my advice to anybody who wants to continue this kind of research. Look into this thing. I didn't have a chance to look into this, or I looked into this and there was so much here that I just couldn't do it. So he kind of gives a couple of places for people to, a couple of roads for people to go down. I thought that was interesting. I wonder if anybody's taken him up on it.
I'm sure someone has since then.
Yeah.
It's an interesting book. It's obscure, but it's interesting.
So you don't buy it? You don't think we're owned by custodians?
Not necessarily. I think there may be something to all that. I mean, I definitely think that there are. I do think that there are. I always use this word, but I always use the word entities, and because I don't know really what they are, but
yeah,
I do think that there's an influence on history, possibly.
Yeah,
especially when you get into like I mean, 19th century with cultism and like what are people really contacting sometimes?
Yeah,
it's a little like I'm not one of these that are just like, oh, everything's demons, and I'm not one of these guys. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. But I do still think that like you just you don't know really what you're messing with sometimes, and there's some people that are really confident that they know, but
yeah,
you can never be too sure what's really listening on the other end.
Right.
That's just kind of my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. With the channeling or the contacting these entities, I'm just like, well, I don't doubt that you are contacting something, but what exactly it is and what its motives are that's where I have questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of think the same thing as far as I'm definitely not a materialist. I think there might be some kind of influence of other things on human history and people. But also like there's a lot of utility in convincing people that you're on either side of that cosmic battle.
Yeah.
It either adds to your ability to terrorize them, being on on the bad side, or you get followers and adherents when they think that you're on the good side of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of it too. And like, no matter if there is some kind of ultimate, pyramid of archons or something like that, like there's a lot of utility at the lower levels in like making people think that they're a part of some kind of hierarchy like that.
That's true. Which side are you guys on?
Great White Brotherhood.
Enki or Enlil? Which
Yeah,
one is
pick
it,
one.
fellas?
The Great White Brotherhood.
You know who
Just
you're talking to.
battle with the Black Lodge.
Yes.
The Black Lodge. All right.
I'll err on the side of good anytime. Right?
On both sides of the veil.
Yeah.
Got to add that in too.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting close to the end. I don't know what time we got here. Yeah.
We've been on there for a while.
Yeah, we have. Well, I
Great
wanted
talk, guys.
Yeah, I did want to talk some cryptids, but maybe we'll have to get to that some future time.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say to everybody, definitely check out Josh and Tim's book. It's one of the most fascinating books on cryptids I've encountered in a long time.
Yeah, and part 2, I think they said that it's supposed to be coming out in December.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So wait, you guys believe in cryptids?
I think it's some kind of weird spiritual thing. There might be some strange animals too, but I think the majority of it is like kind of like what they talk about, like It's Wood's Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reference, the reason why they call the book that, where the footprints end, is because you have cases of people seeing the footprints of Bigfoot or whatever,
They
and
just
then all of a
stop.
sudden it
Yeah.
just stops.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
why does that happen? And then the cases that, especially the cases that have like this element of real high strangeness.
Yep.
There's kind of a difference between Bigfoot encounters in the West as opposed to Bigfoot encounters in the East. The further east you go, the more weird they get. But there's weirdness in the West too.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with something that is such a, and Renner talks about this a lot, when you're dealing with something that is such a large animal that is like more massive than a human being, and like just the sheer caloric intake it would have to
Right.
survive.
Yeah, it's a megafauna.
And when you get to, I mean, maybe it can survive in the forests of the Northwest, but when you get to someplace like here in Tennessee or where you guys are,
yeah.
like what is it eating? Where like you would see it, like it's just,
Maybe it's like a whale. It eats plankton.
Yeah.
A whale eats,
Yeah.
eats the tiniest thing in the ocean, and it's the biggest thing out there that we know about.
Well, I was just going to say, maybe occasionally it leaves behind some giant bones.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
There you go.
well, I mean, if you want to go to the the Expedition Bigfoot Museum in Blue Ridge, Georgia, they do have a giant Bigfoot turd.
Hey.
So,
Bigfoot,
must have been
what is
eating
it called?
something.
Cryptozoological scatology. But my thing that makes me think it's like weirder is the especially the like conjuration, like it responds to conjuration, like Tim, all these practices Tim does. I mean, it's like a weird conjuration of it, and what a lot of secular, I guess secular nuts and bolts Bigfoot people are actually doing, and they're not realizing they actually are doing conjure work.
Conjure work, yeah. And then they're
calling it forth, yeah.
Yeah, they'll call it habituation, but you're like, no, bro, you're conjuring it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the gifting stuff.
Yes.
And
Very
all
forest
that is,
spirit,
the first book deals with folklore. And so this comparison primarily the comparison is between Bigfoot and fairy encounters, encounters with the Fae, and how that those are very similar. And basically, Tim Renner talks a lot about how there's a motif. It's almost like an archetype need that we have in every culture for like a wild man. And that one of the things that he has said many times on his show is that when you get like he's looked at different accounts from the 19th century and how these, of course, we kind of got to take some of this with a grain of salt, but some of these accounts say that, Bigfoot, or they don't describe him as Bigfoot.
Yeah,
the hairy ape man was wearing clothes.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then the accounts become more that he's, unclothed, he's covered with hair. And Tim looks at it almost as if like it's the exact opposite of UFOs, right? Like we started seeing UFOs and like, structured craft and space people as soon as we started getting more technologically advanced. They were always a step ahead of us.
Yeah.
So the phenomenon showed itself to us like that. With Bigfoot, it's opposite. It's like the more technologically advanced we become, the more in need for that wild man motif, and the more we see it. And there's I mentioned Expedition Bigfoot, where they have the gigantic Bigfoot turd. Tim made a point also that people, when they built that there in Blue Ridge, Georgia, which isn't that far from where I am right now.
Oh yeah.
They began to see Bigfoot.
I've heard this.
And to see Bigfoot crossing the road, and then Tim makes the point that it's the reason why that happened is because they built it's not
shrine.
just a museum; it's a shrine.
Yeah, it's a shrine. Yeah. That is very interesting.
The wild man thing reminds me of Gilgamesh and Enkidu.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
there's this
Right.
wild man out in the woods who's huge and you know,
That's one of the
Very
oldest
strong.
oldest versions of that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
he has to be civilized to defeat the custodians.
That's right.
Yes, the custodians always causing problems.
All right, guys. This was a fascinating chat. Thanks so much
Yeah,
for coming on the
absolutely,
show.
man. We had
Awesome.
fun. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Man. Thank you.
Wish you luck
Just to-
with the conference. Give all
Yes.
the data. Where can people find you? Where can people sign up to the conference? And we'll put some of this in the show notes too.
All right. The conference, go to strangerealitiesconference.com. Tickets are $20. That is September 25th, 26th, and 27th online. And Conspirinormal, you can find at conspirinormal.com.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.